of what comes after it. And why can't we have an async CSS loader like we have a script async that kind of just loads it and applies it whenever it's ready, and doesn't block is good, doesn't block is performance, etc. And I dug in this a little bit, and the main reason why things are the way they are is the flashes of unstyled content, aka folk. Essentially, when you say that something is async, a different word for it to say this is going to race with things. This is true for scripts as well. Like when you say that a script is async, you're basically saying this script is going to race with everything else, and whatever happens, happens. And like somewhere down the line, I can handle this raciness. Something we saw about script is that somehow down the line, people don't know how to handle this raciness often. I personally think what we did with script async ended up not being optimal for the web platform, and maybe a bit of an anti-pattern. There are one thing I wanted to add is that people do use can have async loading of style sheets today, for example, by putting media print on them, or by changing the rel from preload to style sheet, etc. There are script ways to do this, but there was a request that kept coming back to have a markup way of doing this, a declarative way of doing this, rather than script. So yeah, so we saw a script async as an not a thing to get too much inspiration from. So I dug up. I was really asking people around what would you use this for, and how do you prevent a flash of unstyled content? And many people say, well, I want to load below default content. Okay, but if you load below default content, then you're racing with the scroll. Like if the user scrolls faster than how fast you loaded your style sheet, then you would have a unstyled content when you scroll. Same as a dialogue stuff. You're racing with how fast is the user going to click the dialogue. So there's always a race involved when you have async CSS or script for that matter. But we did find two places where this was actually legit in some form. One of them is the swapping fonts. There is the fonts, the flash of unstyled text is already something that the web is capable of dealing with in a somewhat legit way, where you can have like a fallback font and it swaps when you load the real font. It's questionable whether it's a good experience, but it's an experience that's useful for a lot of people, and a lot of people use it. So let's say it's at the very least a legit experience. So, and right now, you can swap the font, but you can't swap. Yeah, Barry said it's not a good experience. So we'll take it at this. So yeah. Anyway, let's unshape font display swap. And yeah, so you can swap the font, but you can't swap the style that loads the font. So you're kind of blocking until the style comes, and then you know that you can swap the font, which is like a bit counter, like a bit of a contradiction. The other place that I found interesting is what a lot of people do is that they have a totally invisible widget, and then once the style is loaded, it becomes visible. So there's like something on, there's like a bootstrapping style on it that just makes it display none inline in your HTML, and then when the style loads, it traces with everything else and also displays the widget. So I think that's a legit use case. And in terms of UX, and what I have here in the YCT proposal is to not explore, and I've discussed this with WebPerfWG as well, with the HTML group, not so much explore copying script async into CSS because of the reasons I mentioned, but rather try to explore whether we can solve this font problem and or solve this like issue of a widget that gets, I call it, styled into existence, styled into being displayed. And I made some suggestions on the issue, like have a link rel font style sheet that when it's supported behaves in a certain way where it can only load fonts but is not blocking. And I think what I wanted from this group is to understand whether I'm still struggling about how important this is, let's say that. And I still struggle with, are these the only use cases really? And maybe there's something I don't know about this. So that's it. Yeah, Barry.
Yeah, I was working with Noam and particularly Scott